Hello, everyone. Today we're going to take a look at manhwa about cultivation and karma in action. The protagonist is this kid named Chin Chen, an orphan who has been set up by his wife all his life. Coincidentally, this becomes the impetus for an awakening, after which Chin Chen becomes an immortal cultivator. I hope you like it, and so an orphan who became an immortal energy cultivator. Meet our protagonist named Chin Chen. He was adopted as a baby. Everyone in the family looked down on him and envied his luck, except for Mr. Lin, who adopted him. While Chin Chen was growing up, Mr. Lin insisted on marrying his granddaughter, even though she didn't like it at all. They became husband and wife after all, but for 3 years she never allowed him to touch her or speak a word of affection to her. Her sisters often organized plots against him to seduce Chin Chen. One of the sisters began to undress in front of him, and his wife filmed the events on her phone to use against him. After that, they kicked him out of the house and hired people to beat Chin Chen. That's how difficult life was for our hero, but he did not know how it would change after this incident. After losing consciousness, they were already satisfied and thought that he was finished, that even if he survived, it is unlikely to return to the lady. When our hero lost consciousness, he was transported to another world. Not only was he flying over the water, but there was a golden dragon circling above him, sparking with lightning. His consciousness seemed to be divided into several parts. It was hard for him to accept everything he saw. As it turned out later, Chin Chen is the child of a dragon, and this dragon was resentful of the way our hero was living his life. When asked who he was, the dragon reincarnated into human form and landed on a mountain of skulls. This creature stated that it had other heirs around the world, so our hero would get nothing from it, and our hero thought it might be his father. But then the creature pointed a hand with a magic ball in his direction and said that today he would only inherit his blood and directed a beam of energy in his direction, adding that he hoped our hero would not disappoint him. After receiving this energy, Chin Chen was saturated with it and began to sparkle and become saturated with such power, then he fainted. After that, he started to wake up and saw everything in front of him blurry, you know. It's like trying to open your eyes early in the morning when you can still sleep and dream. He was pretty beat up by those guys. Those girls didn't think he'd be able to wake up that fast. Once he came to his senses, he had a lot of memories of various sacred writings of healers, the secret art of returning immortals. Am I really the son of a dragon? He thought. A magical energy swirled around him, which gradually healed him. The girl standing in front of him earlier saw him on the street completely beaten and brought him home. She called the doctor for help, but he had no time to come, as our hero was already sitting on the bed, and there was not a single scratch on him. He said that he would pay back the girl for saving him. When she turned around, she was stunned. A couple of seconds ago, he was barely breathing, and now he's sitting without a scratch and wants to return the favor for saving him. After introducing himself to her and asking her name, he never heard the answer, because she said he didn't need to know, since she did it for her grandfather. At first, he didn't understand how this could help this girl's grandfather. When she burst into tears, she told him that her grandfather was terminally ill, and his illness could not be cured. As she believed in karma, she decided for herself that she would help many people, and in return, fate would give her the opportunity to spend more time with her grandfather. Our hero offered his help, saying that he knows a little about medicine. She doubted his words because just yesterday she picked him up on the street. At this time, the doctor was telling the old man to take a course of pills, and everything would be fine. But they were interrupted by Chin Chen, who boldly entered the room and said that the old man was really not well, and if not treated properly, he would be in danger. The doctor couldn't stand such insolence and said that he was the best doctor in the city, and since he said that everything was fine, it was foolish to contradict him. Our hero answered him that if something goes wrong, he should take responsibility. The doctor agreed and said that he doesn't make mistakes. What a coincidence that at this point the old man coughed and felt much worse, and his granddaughter asked, "Didn't the doctor say it was okay?" The doctor was in a stupor because just a minute ago the old man was in a normal condition, and then he became so bad his granddaughter said that he would call an ambulance. But our hero said it was too late. Touching the grandfather, he felt his condition and said that he is very exhausted and will no longer be able to resist the disease. The granddaughter could not believe Chin Cheng's words out of desperation and said that if he saved her grandfather, their family would never forget it. Our hero took up his new skills and used his newly acquired healing power. He felt the dragon's power envelop them and gave a strong boost of life energy to the old man. Combining his and the dragon's powers, he channeled them directly into the old man's body. From the surge of such vital energy, the old man felt peaceful and calm for such a long period of illness. After coughing, he was transformed, and it was obvious that he was feeling better. The doctor could not understand how this person was able to pull off such a thing. Chin-chun sat down and realized how it was to heal and lose energy. The old man turned to Chin-chun and said that he would never forget his kindness, and also asked him what he wanted in return for his efforts. But our hero was modest and said that he did not need anything, also praised his granddaughter, that if it were not for her, he would probably already be dead. She only laughed at his words because she was embarrassed by his words. She helped him up off the floor and told him that they would be grateful for his efforts anyway. After she introduced herself, this beauty was called Su Wan, but she looked embarrassed because she became interested in Chin-chun. Our hero took her as a nice girl because he only mentioned his name once and she memorized it. Afterward, she began to wonder how many more years her grandfather could live. Mr. Su was pleased to meet Chin-chun and invited him to dinner tonight. Our hero tried to refuse the dinner, and at that moment he received a message on his phone from his wife, who was not happy that he had survived and told him to disappear as far away as possible. When he saw the message, he knew he could avoid dinner. Under the pretense that he had some business to attend to, he said he would leave and then come to check on his grandfather's well-being. Miss Su offered her help as a driver to give him a ride. As soon as they left the villa, Mr. Su instructed his men to check on the boy, as he is worried about his family since he doesn't know anything about this man. When he arrived to solve his unfinished business, his wife met him and asked him where he had disappeared to and called him a bastard in an impertinent voice. This girl's name was Lin Ching-chun, and she was in a bad mood as usual. As soon as our hero wanted to answer her, she immediately interrupted him without letting him say a word. She said that since he left their family, he should sign the divorce papers. She took this moment to introduce him to Mr. Yang, who would be her husband in the future, adding that she didn't consider Chin-chun to be her husband anyway, so it wasn't cheating. Our hero stated that was it, a relationship. After all, he had literally been serving her for a few years. This relationship should have ended a long time ago. The same lady said it was an honor to serve her. She urged him to sign quickly and get out. Chin-chun signed the documents and threw them straight into their faces and said that from today onwards, he had nothing to do with their family. As he left, she tried to catch up with him and shouted in his wake that he was doing such a thing. Our hero was called to the car, and he accelerated his steps and went to Miss Su. He didn't think she'd be waiting for him on the street. Miss Su said her grandfather had some business with our hero. The two of them stared at each other and couldn't understand how Chin-chun could pick up such a pretty girl. They thought he had hired an actress. To the old man came to report his servants and said that our hero is an orphan, his upbringing was engaged in Mr. Lin, and then married one of his granddaughters. The old man replied that he had never heard of such a family before, which means that their family is not well known. After thinking about it, the old man realized that this guy had nothing and had been serving the Lin family all these years, and he also realized that he had no medical experience either. Lord Su felt that he had overestimated him, but he didn't understand how this kid had managed to cure him. Our hero asked to be left alone before going to see Susan. She heard him and left the room, and he in turn immediately shut himself in the room. He began to blame himself for just taking and healing a person like that manifesting such abilities was dangerous. Sitting down in the middle of the room, he studied his skills. Around him flew various books with a lot of information that he could use for the benefit of society. The book 10,000 Paths caught his eye. He already knew that it was a book on making an immortality pill. He immediately set about preparing it. Asking the servant for help, he gave her a sheet of ingredients to find them for him. At this time, the doctor told Grandpa that if he was 10 years younger, they could give him a transfusion. But in this situation, his body might not be able to withstand such an operation. Miss Su urged Grandpa to have Chin-chun take another look at him. After all, one can try if there is even a little hope. Grandpa began to say that you can't escape death, and he would regret not finding a good home for his granddaughter. At this point, our hero bursts into their room, apologizes for being late, and asks them to try the pill he had just brewed. But the pill had an unbearable odor. His doctor couldn't stand the smell. He started burping rainbows. Yes, yes, rainbows, you didn't hear it. And everyone in the room felt sick. Our hero said that this pill is made of traditional local herbs. He made it for the first time, and it should definitely cure Mr. Su. The doctor was skeptical of the pill and Chin Chung, and asked him if it wasn't an ordinary lump of mud. But our hero doesn't give up and takes responsibility, adding that Grandpa has no other options. The granddaughter tries to convince the grandfather to take the pill, but he doesn't know how he can swallow something that stinks so much. The doctor takes the pill and starts to examine it and declares that it is really made of traditional herbs, and that there will be no harm from it. He adds that if it cures Mr. Sun, he will apologize to Chin Chung and call him master. Mr. Su took the pill in his hand and thrust it into himself with trembling hands. In the background, the doctor still thought it wouldn't help. But as soon as Mr. Su took a sip of the pill, he felt a great surge of energy and peace, comparable to taking a sauna and simultaneously feeling energized after a hard workout. They stared at Mr. Su and saw him become younger before their eyes. The doctor was glad that they could now do a blood transfusion and cure Grandpa for the rest of his life. After that, the doctor pounced on our hero and tried to ask him what this pill was and how he made it, to which he only received the answer that it was a secret. Mr. Su got up from his chair and shook hands with Chin Chung, saying that he was his savior. He also thanked Chin Chung and gave him his villa as a gift. For our hero, the day was like a dream. Unexpectedly, he heard his ex-wife saying he was following her and shouldn't have been here at all. Miss Su wanted to stand up for him, but he didn't let her and said he was living in the villa. But that only amused the couple, and Yang ordered the bouncer to fix Chin Chung's brain. The bouncer started to warm up to punch Chin Chung in the face, but he was interrupted by Miss Su's voice. He immediately realized that he couldn't do anything, because Miss Su was a very respectable person. She asked, since when did he listen to them? She would not see them here again, she declared. The bouncer apologized and said he would teach those two a lesson. He slapped her and said, I'll show you where you belong. And Miss Su and our hero went inside the villa. Jan stopped the bouncer and asked him why he was so scared and who was this girl, to which the bouncer was confused. Do you not know who it is? He asked, and said that it was the same Miss Su from the same Su family. Chin Chen cooked a wonderful dinner for Miss Su, which she was delighted with, even saying that he cooked better than her personal chef. She touched his hands and said that his body was very strong, and she didn't understand how his wife decided to divorce him. To which he scratched his head and told her that they didn't even sleep together, it was so bad during their marriage. She thought she had a chance to win his heart and be with him. But as soon as the thought went away, she realized that she had been looking at him all this time and blushed, just as our hero couldn't stand her gaze and blushed as well. They shyly turned away from each other and went to their seats. Together they had fun taking food. Miss Su thought that she still had enough time to win him over. After that, she went on a business trip and her chauffeur started to discourage her, saying that the guy has a bad reputation and is not allowed to get involved with a person like her. But she quickly put him in his place and the chauffeur had to shut up for the rest of the trip. Miss Su looked out the window and was already dreaming of Chin Chun becoming famous and rich. 3 days had passed since then. Our hero was accumulating energy in himself for perfection. A small dragon manifested in his hands. But this energy was not enough for him. Many different spirits were gathering on this mountain, and it shouldn't take long for our hero to perfect himself. But it still wasn't enough for him. He wanted to become much stronger to try to marry Su Wan. At first, he began to worry if he had fallen in love with her. After all, he couldn't afford such a thing. But our hero was determined, and he longed to climb to the top and become a man worthy of Su Wan. Interrupting his musings were the shouts under the gate. Someone really wanted to meet him. Walking out to the gate, he saw Yang and his cronies saying that Chin Chung was lucky. After all, they could have smeared him even yesterday. Chin Chung explained that he had gotten the villa for a reason, and if something happened to him, they wouldn't just leave it alone, so they should think about it. These brainless guys turned to Jan because they couldn't think of it themselves. Jan threw away his cigarette and said that he was taking responsibility, so they should not hold back. Our hero sighed heavily and said, "Why don't you listen to advice?" He slapped one of them so hard that the others wondered if they should even get involved in such a conflict. Jan slapped the other one viciously and told them to beat him up because they wanted a secure old age. But his phone rang and he found out that Mr. Lin is in the hospital and is very ill, probably dying. Our hero asked what could have happened to Mr. Lin, but Yang rudely told him not to stick his nose in other people's business because he is not part of their family now. Yang left, and Qin-Chen reflected that despite all the abuse, Mr. Lin took care of him. And besides, the doctor who treated Mr. Su was still in town. One could ask him for help. Qin-Chen asked the bandits if they had a car to give him a ride to the hospital. Lin Qin-Chen tried to bribe the doctor to do everything possible to make her father survive. But the doctor told her that money can't buy everything in this life. Their hospital is unable to perform this level of surgery. Yang leaned over to the doctor and gave him a large stack of money and said that the old man should hold out for another week so that they could finish preparing for the census of all the property. But Qin-Chen came to them with a doctor who is capable of performing this level of surgery. He was very happy with the doctor and ran to prepare the operating room. Yang and his Lin Qin-Chen were told to get out because they would only get in the way. They could not think that Qin-Chen could know such a person as Dr. Sun. During this period of time, Miss Su was looking at nature from the balcony, and her grandfather asked if she was thinking about Qin-Chen right now. To which she embarrassedly replied that she was not thinking of anything like that, but her grandfather smilingly told her that he had lived a long life and was very difficult to deceive. Miss Su sat down beside her grandfather and asked if he would approve if she started dating Qin-Chen. Her grandfather was nice. He replied that if she wanted it, he would arrange it for her. Miss Su suggested inviting him to join them. Grandpa agreed and added that the most important thing was that he could bear the responsibility. If Qin-Chen agrees, Miss Su will publicly tell everyone about it. The person who is not needed by the Lin family is needed by the Su family. At that time, the surgery was already over in the operating room. The doctor came out and assured him that the surgery was successful and he would be home tomorrow. Qin-Chen thanked him, but the doctor was very curious as to why he didn't just give the old man a pill. Our hero confessed to the doctor, although he grew up in this family, he was treated worse than a dog. So after the divorce, he wouldn't be trusted to give pills of unknown origin. That's why I called you. You're my only chance to save Mr. Lin. The doctor gave him a friendly clap on the shoulder and told him that he was his master, and that he should go to him for any help he needed. Yang and his buddies came up to them. Qin-Chen immediately realized that if you think of shit, it will appear immediately. But suddenly Qin-Hu joined them. He approached them. Yang already thought that such a respectful person is coming to him, but he was very wrong, because Mr. Hu approached Qin-Chen and shook hands with him. Having offered to give Qin-Chen a lady's ride, Yang didn't understand what was going on here at all. Mr. Hu added that he had organized a banquet in his honor and would like to see him there, but Qin-Chen didn't really want to go. So Mr. Hu decided to take extreme measures. Bowing down in front of Qin-Chen with his guards, he said that if Qin-Chen did not agree, Miss Su would not want to see Mr. Hu in the city, and began to beg him to agree. Even Yang's cronies kneeled down and also started begging, to which Yang got very angry. As soon as our hero heard that Miss Su would be there, he immediately agreed, because it was as important to him as it was to Mr. Hu. Mr. Hu thanked him and gave him a VIP invitation. At this point, Yang's friends wondered if it was even worth it to stand up against Qin-Chen. Yang heard this and chased them away as far as possible, and they were only happy to get out of such a situation. Taking his cell phone, he dialed some unknown person and told him to prepare everything. We moved to the most luxurious 6-star hotel in Bancheng, where the real elite of society live. Qin-Chen was already there looking for Miss Su. In front of him stood Zhang Hua, our hero's classmate, a wealthy heir. The relationship between them was tense, and Xu Xiaoxiao studied with him. A real toady once said that Qin-Chen would never succeed in life. Zhang Hua asked why he came here and who let him in, but Xu Xiaoxiao wanted to chat with him. But our hero didn't care about that. He came to see Miss Su. Xu Xiaoxiao laughed at him, saying he came here to apologize to his ex-wife. But our hero was not confused and answered her with a sharp phrase that for all those years until they did not see each other, she only managed to grow old. She was indignant at his words and wanted to humiliate him in front of everyone. She ran at him to give him a good smack in the face, and he kept insulting her. But a girl suddenly appeared between them and asked them to stop. She said there was no need to make a scene in such a place. Standing between them was Gong Yao, the person who took care of Qin Chung while he was studying at the university. But the guy didn't stop there and declared that he could do whatever he wanted in his brother's house and nothing would be done to him. Going up to the girl, he took her by the chin and said that he could do whatever he wanted with her and he would not be told a word. But he immediately got punched in the face for saying that. Guess who from? The girls were shocked at this turn of events. But our hero wipes his hands and says that in his hand something came into being. Here is a humorist. The girl starts to feel very bad for Qin Chung, but he calmed her down by saying that if he didn't put them in their place, they would continue to abuse everyone they could get their hands on. Xiao Xiao sat down with her boyfriend and called the guards and said that now he was dead and she would bury him right there. But Zhang Hua's brother comes in. He was excited and was about to explain what had happened. But his face suddenly froze. He did not think that the situation will take such a turn. His brother ran up to Qin Cheng and his girlfriend and asked if they were all right, also apologizing profusely. The brother and his girlfriend were amazed at what they saw. Mr. Hu turned to them, at which point they realized that they were dead. His younger brother began to apologize, and his girlfriend begged him to let them go. He looked at them angrily and said he would let them go. They were very happy to hear that. But after saying that, he asked, who was trying to bury who? Xiao Xiao was in a stupor and could not say anything. Only one thing came to her mind, to apologize. She fell on her knees in front of Qin Chen and begged, but our hero smiled at her and said that she did not deserve it. Mr. Hu brought him to his owl office and gave him a gift. There were cigars, alcohol, and a money card. Since our hero didn't drink or smoke, he chose the card, hoping that it contained a large sum of money. Mr. Hu said in a slightly offended voice that all the important people of the city would be at the business party, and he had to invite the Lin family. Now he was afraid that he could offend Miss Su. Qin Chen agreed to help him with this. Mr. Hu was very happy and thanked him by giving him a shopping alley that makes enough money for an easy start. Qin Chen was very happy because there he would be able to find many items to refine his qi energy. After that, he went outside and looked at the stars. Not far from him, a couple who got what they deserved was coming out. He was interrupted by the ringing on his phone. He received a call from his grandfather Lin, who had raised him his whole life. He suggested he meet up and talk. After all, he had something he needed to confess to. When he came to his grandfather, he took him by the hand and they began to talk. His grandfather was glad that Qin Chen came, because he had not treated him very well. Our hero expressed his gratitude, because if it wasn't for Mr. Lin, he might not be alive anymore, but he gave him life by adopting him. Interrupting him, his grandfather told him the truth. In fact, our hero is not an orphan. 20 years ago, when Mr. Lin's family was fishing, then he met a strange man at the seashore. That man stood on the water, with many warships in front of his face, but there wasn't a single bit of fear in his eyes. In the course of the battle, that man destroyed all the warships and began to approach the shore. After the battle, he approached Mr. Lin and entrusted the infant. This was our Qin Chen. The man asked him to watch over him until his wounds healed, and afterward he would return for the infant. However, those 20 years flew by like an instant. It was because of that man's blessing that the Lin family took their current position. The old man burst into tears and said that his family was very guilty before Qin Chen, and asked for his own sake to have a last meal with Qin Chung, to which our hero agreed. After that, Qin Chung arrived at Mr. Su's villa and was telling him about the pills that replenish vitality by way of qi energy in the body. They were interrupted by Huang Lun, who didn't think anyone else was capable of producing such a thing, so he also asked where our hero had learned how to do it. Qin Chen introduced himself and said that he was at the second level of qi refining. He was also without family and without a clan, but Mr. Huang wondered if he could take such knowledge without family and clan. So he also ducked down and asked if his ability had a demonic essence. Miss Su stood up for him, saying that it couldn't be since he had cured his grandfather in front of witnesses. Huang Lun said that he could heal with the gifts of the earth and sky, as well as with miasmas and poisonous insects. No one had seen our hero practicing, so how could we conclude that he was innocent? But he was immediately told that there was no evidence to the contrary. He thought about it and realized that they all said the right thing. At this time, our hero went around Mr. Huan and taught him how to stand properly in a stand. But he got angry because it was unacceptable for some guy to teach a man who had been learning it for years. He glowed with his energy and told Qin Chen to stop talking. Let them be judged by force. At first, our hero refused. After all, he is Mr. Su's friend. But Mr. Huang said that if the guy managed to at least touch him, then he would recognize the strength of our hero. After saying that, Qin Chen sighed heavily and agreed to the duel. He asked for forgiveness in advance, because there was a chance that Mr. Huang would be unconscious after the duel. After a couple of punches, Mr. Huang was lying on the floor with foam coming out of his mouth. Miss Su started to worry if he had hurt himself and examined him. And then she pinched him because he scared the hell out of her, because Mr. Huang was so damn strong, and if our hero lost, he would go toe-to-toe with the villa. Qin Chen said that he is strong on his feet, so there is nothing to worry about. Miss Su said that she hopes it will be the same in the future. Our hero froze for a second, looking at her, and repeated, "In the future?" She went to the balcony, saying it just came to her mind. Our hero decided to try his luck and asked if they could call another person to the business meeting. He asked Qin Hu because he wanted to go to the meeting so badly at that time. She agreed to have one more person at the meeting, after which she asked what kind of relationship they had with Qin Chen. He didn't understand at first and got a couple of punches from her. Afterward, she asked if he would protect her if she was bullied by someone in the future. Our hero swore that he would not allow her to be abused. They held hands and were about to kiss, but they were interrupted by their beloved grandfather on the pretext that he had bought a century-old rare medicinal plant for him at an auction. Miss Su asked to let Qin Chen go with her, but they dared to change his clothes first. So they went to one of the most elite stores in the city. Choosing a good suit, she looked at one of the expensive ones for him and sent him to try on the suit. When she left the fitting room, she couldn't resist him, calling him a model and handsome. After that, she ran around the store and took more things for him to try on, but our hero was modest and refused. An unexpected encounter was in the store. They met Yan and his wife, who wanted to humiliate him as always. Ian decided to warn our hero that he was going to buy up the whole auction. Miss Su was not clear who would pay for it and called him a chatterbox. That same day, they went to the auction. At that moment, they were bidding for the ring, and Yang was raising the bids to get it for himself. He was already happy to have it, but his bid was outbid by a very large sum that could buy a villa. Miss Su confidently held the sign and was willing to pay more to keep the ring out of Jan's hands. The bid was never outbid, and Miss Su took the ring for herself. After this bet, everyone went out for a 15-minute break. Jan and his wife were very angry about the lost ring. As people dispersed a bit, they ran up to Miss Su and Qin Cheng, shouting they wanted to buy a ring for their wedding. Our hero replied to her that if the person had already been utilized, then the ring should be the same. She got really angry, but Yang calmed her down and started sucking up to Miss Su. She didn't think he would want to be friends with her, so she asked him if he was serious now. At that moment, a ring was brought to her. Taking the ring, she said she didn't like it, and she didn't think their couple deserved the ring. She threw it out the window. There was a pond outside the window, she added. If they wanted it so badly, let them go and get their own ring. Jan's wife couldn't calm down and couldn't believe that Miss Su had thrown it into the pond. Jan calmed down his future wife and said that he would definitely buy the last item of the auction. After a break, they came to the final auction item. Miss Su explained that buying the ring was necessary, as well as throwing it away in front of the couple. After all, people like that also need to be humiliated from time to time. They were shown the final item, and Miss Su's eyes lit up. There was a necklace that she definitely liked as well as Qin Cheng. He decided to buy it for her to show his care for her. She agreed to such a gift. Everyone slowly began to place bets, and our hero outbid them at once with a tidy sum. People in the hall wondered what kind of person he was and why he was ready to give out such a sum of money at once. Yan really needed the necklace and started raising the stakes. Chin Chen also outbid him because the card he got had enough money on it, plus the profit from the trading alley was not insignificant. Yang was angry and continued to bid. The price went up to 8 million, but Yang didn't know that Chin Chen could give much more than that. Yang believed that he would still outbid and Chin Chen would give up. But our hero sighed heavily and decided to end it with a bet of 20 million. Naturally, no one even thought of interrupting him. It was a huge amount of money. Everyone in the hall was excited and wanted to meet our hero as soon as possible, but they quickly ran away after the auction to their car. Miss Su said that he was able to surprise a lot of people in that hall, and he has a great future. Our hero replied that it was all thanks to her, and he really wants to put a necklace on her. When he put the necklace on Miss Su, he saw how well it emphasized her beauty, and he said many compliments to her. He then asked her if she would marry him, to which Miss Su replied that if she liked someone, she wouldn't care about the person's status. Besides, she is looking forward to the future and has faith in our hero. He was pleased with her words and smiled. And at this moment, Jan S. wife was looking for the ring in the pond, and she couldn't help thinking that she was embarrassing herself so much. That same night, Chin Chen was at the mountain and gathered energy to enhance his skills. He sighed heavily and realized that his chi refining level had risen to the 3rd level, and he would have to accumulate energy for several days for the upgrades. His thoughts were interrupted by the phone, which rang. It was Chin Hu calling him. He had some problems and was asking for our hero's help. Mr. Hu had a construction site on one of the properties, and strange things were happening there. Mr. Bai assured that it was purely coincidence and everything would be fine in the future. But recently there was an accident and a man died. So many workers didn't want to continue working. They thought the place was cursed. Those who worked on this site had problems in their families. Someone started to get sick. Because of this, work was stopped. Chin Chen came to them as soon as possible and said that the matter was much more serious. After looking at the unfinished building, he saw that it was emitting some kind of energy. Mr. Hu offered to stop work to deal with it, but Chin Chen pointed out the place where the energy was most concentrated and said to dig a hole there. Mr. Bai was unhappy with Chin Chen's appearance because, in his opinion, he appeared out of nowhere and began to give out instructions. Our hero replied that it was only caution, not instructions. But Mr. Bai was offended by such insolence and wanted an apology if they didn't find anything there. One of the remaining workers started digging a hole at the indicated spot. After digging a hole 5 meters deep, he still found nothing, but he kept digging. Mr. Hu was a little disappointed that nothing had been found yet, because if he could disappoint Mr. Bai, it was unlikely that he would be able to find a master like him. He even regretted calling Chin Chen. But not even 5 minutes later, the laborer found some kind of box and took it out from the pit. When they opened it, they saw a blade imbued with dark energy. It was cursed and brought all these misfortunes. Mr. Bai asked if he had a fight with anyone in the near future, because very bad people do this kind of thing. Mr. Hu recoiled, for he had not quarreled with anyone. This item brings real bloody disasters. This construction site is now cursed. He didn't know what he should do and how he should deal with such a calamity. Mr. Bai couldn't help, for the curse was very strong. Our hero looked at the blade and said that he would take it and deal with it himself, so that Mr. Hu would not have any more trouble. He was so happy that he offered any help that Chin Chen could ask for. Mr. Bai wanted to ask how Chin Chen had such abilities at such a young age, but our humble hero said he had no family and no clan, turned around and left. When he came to the forest to the mountain, he sat down and began to look at the blade. He also felt the same evil energy that was on Mr. Su, thinking that maybe these people were targeting their family. Raising the blade into the air, he shattered it into small shards and vowed to catch the person involved. In the morning, many dignitaries and reporters who were broadcasting live across the country began to gather. Surprisingly enough, the Lin family was invited there as well. They discussed who they had gathered so many guests for and found out that the Su family had introduced the most important guest of the day for whom the banquet had been made. When they saw Chin Chen, they couldn't understand how he had gotten here. Perhaps he had used the Lin family's name to get here. He told her that her family was nothing. She was very angry and didn't want to leave this situation so easily. Calling the guards, she pointed her finger at Chin Chung and said that he was pretending to be a member of her family to get into this event. But the guards didn't react the way she thought they would and escorted her out of the event for slandering a guest. Miss Su came on stage and announced to the guests that Chin Chung was the most honored guest of today's event. Yang was shocked at how high Chin Chung had gotten. She introduced him to all the elites of this city. They thought he was a suck-up and had gotten so high. One of the guests drew attention to himself and addressed our hero, saying that he was so scared that he couldn't say a word. Chin Chen took the microphone and said that he may not look worthy of Suwon now, but one day everyone will change their minds. From the entire crowd, only one person clapped for him, who was supposedly another suck-up from the school where Chin Chen used to attend. Chin Chen didn't expect to be on stage today. Mr. Su introduced them to Mr. Cheng Quan. This man is engaged in the sale of building materials in Bincheng, so he is also closely cooperating with the Su family. But our hero was immediately interested in a small detail of the new acquaintance. He offered to remove the bracelet to Mr. Cheng Quan because it emits dark energy and can lead to bad consequences. He explained to Mr. Cheng that this bracelet would only bring trouble as it was enchanted with dark energy, to which he reacted angrily, as this bracelet was brought to him by his son from the temple to attract wealth. Chin Chun started to ask if his son was able to turn to the evil sorcerer, but Mr. Chung couldn't stand such insolence and called out his bouncer, nicknamed Scar. He ordered him to teach our hero a good lesson and asked him to make sure that Mr. Su didn't hold a grudge against him. Miss Su was worried about Chin Chung, for Scar was a very strong opponent. Because they put him in an awkward position, he must learn how to deal with this kind of situation. Otherwise, if he failed, he wouldn't be able to gain a foothold in this city. She had faith in him, after all, he had never once disappointed her. Scar tried to attack him not with all his strength to test his capabilities, but our hero calmly deflected his attack and counterattacked him, causing him to fly away from Chin Chung. Getting up after such a blow, he said to use his power to defeat Chin Chung. Mr. Chung gave the go-ahead to use whatever it takes. Scar began to use his chi energy. After applying the martial energy strike technique, people began to scatter. Chin Chung covered himself and realized that this level of chi purification was the second level, or even higher. Our hero applied his energy chi and glowed with an energy much brighter than his own. He was sure he could handle Scar. As soon as Scar saw that Chin Chen also possessed chi energy, he realized that he didn't need to be weak, but to fight at full strength. After applying his technique, he disappeared from Chin Chung's sight, and immediately appeared from behind to strike at his rear. But our hero quickly reacted and struck back, causing a surge of energy and the ground to crack, throwing them away from each other. Scar again attacked him, and this time he decided to strike with his foot to cause maximum damage. The ground beneath them shook, and the ground beneath them could not be recovered. Dust rose into the air, and nothing could be seen. Miss Su began to worry about Chin Chung after all. Only Scar came out of the smoke with a smile on his face, saying that he was done with him. But suddenly, a cloud of dust formed in front of him, and a hand appeared from it and grabbed his arm. It was our hero who started to twist his arms and looked at him. Chi energy was manifested in his eye. Scar tried to resist, but Chin Chen held him very tightly. Then he threw him to a great height. Scar didn't think that it would happen like this and our hero would be so strong. Once he landed, he was already doomed to be defeated. Chin Chen took his hand and declared him victorious. Scar in turn accepted the defeat and remained lying in the crater, deprived of the strength to even get up. Mr. Su was very happy that our hero was much stronger than that guy. Mr. Chung approached him and expressed his opinion about the bracelet and Chin Cheng's skill, but Chin Chung didn't care what he would do with the bracelet. It wasn't about his family, but Mr. Cheng proposed to make an argument. Our hero at first did not understand why to argue with him, and on what. He said that if nothing happens to his family for 3 days, Chin Chung will have to kneel in front of him and the whole city and apologize. Well, if it was the other way around, then Mr. Cheng would kneel down to apologize. Our hero agreed to such terms. They were overheard by some people near them, and one of them reluctantly suggested to the other to stay away from Chin Chung. To which the other replied that Chin Chun was only at the 3rd stage of chi purification, and would only need to get rid of him. That same evening, the banquet continued, and Chin Chung was sought after by one girl. When she approached him, she showed him a box and said that Grandpa had passed this as a parcel. After she said that Grandpa didn't come because his physical condition was still very weak, he didn't want to seem rude to the Su family. Our hero accepted the parcel and let the girl go. She said goodbye and left them. Chin Chen opened the parcel and saw a letter there, which said that it was addressed to "My dear son." Chin Chen saw the letter and wanted to open it, but Miss Su stopped him, saying, "There are a lot of extra people here," that he should open it later. He agreed with her. After that, she took him to a secret room that they use for privacy and to read all the important documents and letters. She was so careful that our hero started to get nervous. He opened the letter and began to read it. From the letter, he learned that he has a mother, and she lives in the capital. Her name is Jo Chin. It also reminded him that he has great strength and potential. After all, he is the keeper of the dragon power. Putting the letter on the table, he had even more questions. This world was not as simple as it appeared. Afterward, he walked back out to the banquet. Miss Su walked up to him, and before he could ask anything, one of the servants suddenly came running towards them. He fell to his knees and said there was trouble. It was about Mr. Cheng and his house. He had literally left the banquet a few minutes ago. After they arrived at their villa, his wife seemed to go berserk. She took a kitchen knife and started running around the house, waving it around. He managed to run away to call for help. They were trying to figure out who best to send to help them, and our hero volunteered to help them, saying that he was right. It was the bracelet. Miss Su tugged him and told him not to worry about what was going on. He smiled back at her. At this time, there was silence in their villa. Their house was trashed. Scar said that they had temporarily calmed her down, but it was only temporary. Mr. Cheng admitted that Chin Chen was right, and he had already summoned a specialist to help them in such a situation. The doors opened, and Chin Chen stood in front of them. Mr. Chung was not happy to see him after all. He did not want to admit his guilt. Chin Chen immediately told him to take off his bracelet, for then it might be too late. Our hero was interrupted by Mr. Cheng's son, who brought the bracelet, saying that it was a bracelet from the sacred temple. Chin Chen realized that it was difficult to prove anything to them and decided not to continue to persuade them. But Mr. Cheng's son didn't like it and decided that our hero was just trying to intimidate him. Chin Chen told them that since everything was as they said, he would leave the place. But when they came to ask for help, he would remind them of everything. They were happy that he wanted to leave the place and were sure that everything would be fine after he left. They also managed to call him a blabbermouth who had no power. Immediately after saying that, Master Bai came in. They politely asked to examine Mr. Cheng's wife. Master Bai, upon seeing Chin Cheng, greeted him with the words, "Master Chin, you're here too." Those two's jaws dropped. They didn't think he was so famous. Master Bai turned to Chin Chung in a whisper. He wanted to know how bad it was. After all, if Chin Chung couldn't handle it, then Master Bai had no business being here. Chin Chun replied to him that these people were looking down on him and had decided to send him away. Master Bai decided to give it a try after all. But no sooner had he opened his bag than Mr. Cheng's wife broke the chains that restrained her and ran outside. Master Bai saw the chains shatter and said that she was definitely possessed. He couldn't handle such dark energy. Mr. Cheng was nervous. He didn't know what to do, because if something happened to his wife, he would never forgive her. Master Bai replied that Master Chin was much stronger than him. Let him try. He left Master Bai and walked over to Chin Cheng, addressing him with these words. "Chin Chen, no, Master Chin, please save my wife." Chin Chun asked if he was ready to kneel before him in front of the whole city and ask for forgiveness, but Master Chung shook his fists and tried to solve everything with money. He offered him 50 million and asked if it would be enough, but our hero thought about the prospect. The money will run out sooner or later. Chin Chun thought about the contents of the shelves. There are many herbs of interest to him. He said that he would spend a lot of power to dispel the dark energy, and Mr. Chung interrupted him at this point and offered to give him all the herbs he had. They agreed on these terms. Chin Chun said that he was waiting. Mr. Cheng thought that he wanted the herbs and asked him, "Now?" Then Chin Chun shouted at him to take off the bracelet, and Mr. Cheng gave it up in a flash. He took the bracelet and used his chi energy to completely cleanse the bracelet of the dark energy. The bracelet shattered and cracked, and amidst this, Mr. Chung's wife stopped and fell to the floor. The man ran to his wife while Master Bai praised Master Chin. Chin Chun looked around and didn't realize where his son had gone. And as soon as he saw him, he started trembling and said that he had nothing to do with it. Then he started to run away from Chin Chung, but luckily Scar was in his way and caught him. He brought him to Chin Chung and asked him what to do with him. Since it was inconvenient to interrogate him in such a mess, they decided to take him to Chin Chung's villa. That same night at the Lunhaishan villa, the kid was being interrogated. Scar didn't hold back and gave the kid a good workout. At this time, Chin Chen wondered why it was Scar who decided to help him. He agreed to work for him from today. Even if he wouldn't be paid, he was willing to work for food. The beaten guy decided to tell them everything. It turns out that a month ago, he met a man at the temple, and the man offered him a bracelet that he said would protect the family for a year. Chin Chen didn't think it was possible to be so stupid. After all, free cheese is only in a mousetrap. The guy wiping his tears could not think that he would be slipped such a bracelet. After all, he was in the best temple in the country. Who knew that there are such bad people? It turns out they had lunch a couple times, and the man told him that he has the same bracelet. It brings only happiness and prosperity. The reason the man decided to give the bracelet to him is purely because he wants to do a good deed. After these meetings, he told him where to find an expert. In the Xuanmingfu clan, this clan is one of the biggest clan refining clans in the city. Even though they work with dark energy, a lot of people turn to them for help. Chin Chen was surprised. Even though this guy knew their history, he still went there. The guy was angry because he didn't care who he paid or what kind of energy they used. The main thing was the well-being of the family. With trembling hands, he ducked his head to the ground because he didn't think that it would turn out like this. Chin Chen put his hand to his head. He couldn't understand these rich people. He asked Scar to take the boy home, and himself began to think about this clan, because at first glance, the clan lured the rich into their trap. But on the other hand, wasn't their goal the Su family? If our hero didn't take the initiative, anyone could have been sent there, and there's no telling how it would end. With the dagger found at that construction site, he would never have believed that the Su family was not being hunted. Our hero began to research the clans and started with the Xuanming clan. This clan is very strong and it specializes in curses. Their elder is at the top of the foundation building stage. Their methods are always effective. This clan has been linked to the local bureaucracy and is behind many incidents. Our hero has come to the conclusion that this clan is just a tool in someone's hands. There is only one thing to find out: who is in charge of this clan. But Chin Chen couldn't afford it. With the amount of herbs he had gotten, he was ready to achieve a huge trial. Already by the end of the night. His stomach ached the morning after eating the night before. All those herbs and vegetables looked good, but the quality was not good. But he had managed to rise to the 6th level of qi refinement overnight. He met Scar, who was cleaning the villa, and Scar was also told to give Chin Chung an invitation to come to Mr. Su's house for dinner. Chin Chung heard him, and after a brief conversation, he learned that Scar was sleeping in the courtyard of his villa. After a heavy sigh, he suggested that he sleep inside the villa, because there were many empty rooms, so there would also be a chance of not catching a cold. He also offered to show Scar a couple of exercises, after which his muscles wouldn't be as sore as they were before. Scar thanked Chin Chen profusely. Our hero arrived at Mr. Su's house for lunch. He was a little worried because usually they just call him, but now it was all official. When he opened the door, he saw the guy who said that a ragamuffin like him couldn't cure Mr. Su, and he'd never believe it. Clapping his hands, he was presented with the gift he had brought for Mr. Su, stating that the most important thing in curing is quality ingredients. He opened the box that contained a Tianshan snow lotus. It had been specially found to order for Mr. Su. Simply put, this lotus could prolong a person's life. Chin Chen said it was rotten, not a gift. The guy was very furious because he had given a very large sum of money for this lotus. Our hero introduced another pill that would clearly help Mr. Su. Introducing it as a spiritual refinement pill, it was something he had been working on all night. It should significantly increase his spiritual power. But the guy was not a bad guy either and said that he had seen such candies being sold at the school gate. They were angry one-on-one because they slandered the gifts one-on-one as gracefully as possible. Taking Miss Su's hand, he said that no matter how it is, he is the future son-in-law of the Su family, and he has no reason to compete with Qin Chen. He also started saying bad things about Qin Chung and kept saying that a husband should be chosen from a good family, alluding to himself. But our hero expressed his opinion after all, thinking only about money is not a guarantee of success. The most important thing in marriage is love. What is the point of marriage if you do not love each other? After saying that, he slapped his hand to let Miss Su go and said that the future is in talent and strength, and this guy is trash in his eyes. He was very angry and decided to teach Qin Chung a lesson, swinging a punch straight at his chest. But who would have thought that after such a blow, this guy's arm would break, because our hero was standing behind Miss Su. All the guards ran to the boy, and he cried out in pain, because it hurts a lot when you break your arm. The guy said that nothing is over between them, he will still deal with him. Our hero called him another moron. Mr. Su took his head. After all, this guy is the son of a large industrialist S family, and a lot of enterprises are trying to get their support. But Qin Chun said that it will be all right. He wanted to tell them something important. He began to tell how a few days ago he had dug up a dagger at a construction site. It was cursed with dark energy, just like that bracelet. At first he thought it was a mere coincidence, but then it became clear to him that only Su's family would be affected by these events. When Qin Chen and Mr. Su first met, he felt the same energy that was on those things. Miss Su and her grandfather looked at each other and started smiling and laughing. He didn't understand why they were laughing at first, but Miss Su said that in such a small town, no one would dare to attack their family, and she already knew who was behind all this, so our hero offered his help. But Miss Su understood that such a thing was not even within Qin Cheng's power, and the consequences would be severe. Qin Chen wondered, isn't there a way to solve all this? But they already had the answer to this. Everything could be solved. But the time had not yet come. He wondered how this time had not yet come. Miss Su showed the cup to Qin Chung. There was something drawn on it. It was a villa. Our hero has heard of this place before, but he doesn't know anything about this villa in detail. Miss Su said that they used to live there and were the most respected family in the capital. But to great regret, they were kicked out. 2 years later, they settled in Benchang. Starting from the bottom, they gradually took their current position. But there are people much stronger than their family, and they, after a while, found them. After all the hardships their family has experienced, now is life for them, a true blessing. Qin Chen promised them to return everything they had rubbed off, no matter what obstacles they faced. Miss Su said that she would never forget the humiliation she had suffered, and she would definitely make them experience it all on their own skin. But she got very carried away, and actually wanted to say that our hero needs to get back on his feet first, instead of dealing with their family's affairs. But Qin Chun said that he would only need 3 years to restore the Su family to its former glory. He said that he would make the entire capital city stand at their feet. She decided to ask him again. Would he be able to handle all the problems in his way by himself? Adjusting his suit, he vowed that he would go through everything for the sake of their family. That same day at one of the villas, the son complained to his father. He said that he had done nothing and Qin Chen had jumped on him and beaten him, also showing his swollen hand. He asked to stand up for his son because this could easily happen again. The father, taking his son by his delicate face, asked if he thought the man dared to touch him. Pulling away, he wondered one more thing. Since that man was beating people to a pulp, why did he let him go so easily? Perhaps he was scared and realized his mistake. The son had already gotten excited, because perhaps his father was going to teach Qin Chung a lesson. The father had stated that idiots were unteachable. But this was a great opportunity for him to teach the Su family a lesson, because his son was so eager to get Su won. After arriving at Mr. Su's house, he entered the villa. The servants tried to stop him, but it was no use. When he entered the living room, he looked around and didn't understand how it was that no one wanted to greet Mr. Dai. Qin Chun sat in front of him and asked, "You must be Mr. Di Chao's father?" He sipped his coffee and looked at Mr. Di with a smile. The latter asked if he was the person who beat up his son. He made a commotion in front of Mr. Su. "What's wrong with me teaching him a lesson?" asked Chin Chen, although he was not very comfortable saying such a thing to such a person. Mr. D said that he would teach both Chin Cheng and the Su family a lesson for their insolence, because pathetic people like them have no right to baring their teeth. After showing the balloon with the villa in it, he introduced himself as the most powerful family in this city, and his son is Benshin's most enviable groom. It will be a true blessing for the Su family to be twinned with someone like them. Chin Chen was angry from his insolent remarks, but Mr. D wasn't done yet. He wanted Chin Chen to kneel down and admit his mistakes, and if his apology was sincere, he would let his son marry Su Wan and even let Chin Chen stay in the city. Our hero was angry at his remarks and decided to continue talking to this man. After getting up from the sofa, he walked over to Mr. Dai and asked him what would happen if he did not kneel. Mr. D replied that they would spend the rest of their lives in wheelchairs. And at this point, our hero decided to teach the insolent bastard a lesson. He touched his forehead very sharply and took his hand away. Mr. D didn't understand what happened and closed his eyes, then shouted what the hell he had done. Our hero replied that since he was looking down on the Su family and him, let him start to reap the benefits. He wondered why nothing hurt him, calling Chin Chung an idiot, turned around and walked away, saying that after what happened, let him not accuse him of anything. Our hero happily waved his hand, so to speak, sent him on his way. After sighing, he realized that he had already dealt with one. Miss Su and her grandfather came up to him, asking if it was all over with Mr. Dai. He told them that he had used a spell that was harmless to the body but harmful to the mind. Mr. Su was surprised because this is a very strong spell and it is very difficult to learn it, especially for young guys like Chin Chen. Our hero said that in 3 days at the most, he would come begging for mercy and told them to send him to Ching Chen. Miss Su asked what he wanted to get there, and our hero told her that there was a very large market of medicines there, and he wanted to try his luck and visit it. Also, he had previously thought that it would be good to have a large supply of materials to improve his strength and save Su's family from problems. The next day, Chin Chen and Scar were standing at the bus stop. Scar asked if it would be easier for him to buy a car. Isn't it right for him to have a car with such a status? Chin Chen told him that he was thinking about the wrong thing. After all, public transportation. It is low carbon and environmentally friendly. You need to change your thinking, and Scar completely agreed with him. After waiting in line, they got on the bus, but they didn't expect what was waiting for them in the bus. They were standing in the bus, all sweaty because it was full of people and hot air. They were already thinking of buying a car. When they got off the bus, they were at one of the stops in the city of Chingchen. They couldn't enjoy the fresh air. Scar offered to buy a car for Chin Ching, but our hero said he would buy it himself. Before he could catch his breath, he heard his name being called. When he looked up, he saw Gong Yao in front of him. She didn't expect to meet him in this city. Chin Chen also did not expect her to meet her in this city. He asked her what brought her here. She told him that she was fired from the company she worked for. Chin Chen looked at her and said that one would have to be a complete idiot to fire someone like her. It's a long story. There was a guy who was transferred to their team and he started making her life difficult on a daily basis, preventing her from performing her direct duties, and then fired her. Chin Chen offered his help in resolving such an issue, calling her boss a real creep, but she started to quickly talk him out of it, saying that it's okay because she'd forgotten about it and her sister was starting a company here and needed an assistant, so she came. She also offered to give Chin Chung a ride with Scar on their business. But then her sister showed up and asked who these people were. After looking at Chin Chung's clothes, she took in his cheap t-shirt and sneakers bought at the market, and also did not forget about the laundry pants. She called Chin Cheng a real misunderstanding and asked him if he was a beggar. Gong Yao imagined Chin Chung saying that they used to study together, and he was a very good person, and he also helped her a lot. The guy in the car heard Chin Chung's name and looked out and said that he had heard of such a guy before, saying that he was now a household name in the city, the future son-in-law of the Su family. He asked if he was that guy. Sister Gong Yao introduced her boyfriend. His name was Sha Ning. Also added, why would a guy from the Su family ride the bus and buy things at the market? They were offered a ride and told that there were bags in the car for them to put under themselves so as not to dirty the interior. She also told them not to think of luring Gong Yao to them, calling her a talented child. After they arrived at the restaurant, the sister wanted to order another meat and pickles. But our hero noticed that there is enough food on the table, they should at least eat what is on the table. She objected that she wanted to give him something worth eating, look at it simpler, eat faster. He thanked her for being so hospitable. Qin Chen thought that she was quite a characterful woman and was glad that her sister Gong Yao was not like that. At dinner, her sister also offered to take Gong Yao with her to the signing of the contract with Mr. Li, so that she could learn more about the details of the job. Gong Yao heard that he was said to be a real pervert, so she asked if her sister was afraid of such a person. But her sister encounters perverts on the robot more often than cockroaches, and if she doesn't learn how to fight back now, something will definitely happen one day. Her boyfriend refuses to go with them. Since Dee's family is involved, she tells him that she didn't even offer him. Qin Chen heard that the Dee family was involved and said that he would go with them. The sister was surprised. Why is he there? But Qin Chen introduced Scar and said that he meant him, because as long as he was with them, no one would touch them. The sister agreed, only that they would signal if something went wrong. Qin Chen agreed to her terms. When they arrived at the construction company, they went to see the man who gives business authorization and investment. He read the contract and said it was hard to deal with small businesses. The sister replied that she understood his concerns and was willing to cooperate with them on any terms. He put the contract on the table and started to smile, and wondered who the girl next to him was, how old she was, and what her name was. Gong Yao only replied that she was 25, and he immediately spread his legs and clapped himself on one of his legs, saying, "Sit down, let us discuss our cooperation." Her sister stood up for her. "Mr. Li, is this normal? I have never heard of a contract being signed sitting on your knees." He objected to her that she knew about signing contracts. Pulling Gong Yao by the arm to his side, said that doing business is a complicated thing. Hugging her from behind, he said that he thought he and this girl would get along, so he wanted to talk to her alone, ordering his sister to go for a walk. The sister realized that things were not going according to plan. Taking out her phone discreetly, she dialed Qin Chen. Qin Chen, having received the expected call, decided to break into this office. After opening the door, he said hello to him. He didn't understand who this man was and why he was barging in at such a moment. Approaching Mr. Li, he introduced himself and asked if he had heard of him before. Shaking his hand, he asked if he was the jerk who recently quarreled with the Dai family. Before he could finish, he shouted. After all, Qin Chen squeezed his hand very hard, asking if Mr. Li didn't believe that fate had brought them together. From such pain, he agreed with everything that was said to him. Then he released his hand, which was already shaking with pain. Qin Chen told him that he likes it when people admit their mistakes. Also asked what's up with the contract that they wanted to sign. The one agreed that everything would be done. The sisters asked if Qin Chen was okay and told him that they would take it from there. And this Mr. Li took advantage of the moment and used his phone to send a message to Mr. D, saying that he had a guy named Qin Chen now, so he should hurry up and deal with him. You have no idea what's going to happen next? I'll end it here. It's an interesting manhwa. I enjoyed it, and I hope you did too. The continuation of this story will be released as soon as there are enough chapters for a new retelling. Thanks for watching. Take care of yourself.